Hi, welcome to my channel. We all have a story, and today I wanted to continue on my personal story, the stories of my life, and which will detail the different aspects of my life and some of the good and some of the really not so good things that I've gone through. I'm getting to a point in the story of my life where I'm beginning to get to some of the bad parts. So just wanted to let you know ahead of time that I'm going to be very candid about the things that I've experienced, mostly with my mother at this stage of my life. Later on it would be with my stepmothers, and then after that it would be with my husband, my now ex-husband. So getting to the not so great parts, maybe some would wonder why I would want to tell my story so openly and be so candid when it could, reflect negatively on some people. And I think one of the biggest reasons why I want to do this is, number one, because abuse is so rampant in our society and so many people are quiet about it and they don't speak about it, and they're ashamed to talk about it. And because of that, the abuse continues. And I just think that just by speaking about it, then it will begin a process where maybe abuse will no longer be able to continue, at least in the life of the person speaking about it. Because I have pretty much determined that abuse is not something I'm going to tolerate anymore in my life. So, and also one other reason is because I have a niece who is being and has been manipulated by my mother, and I hope that one day maybe she can stumble upon my channel somehow, some way. I don't know, maybe I'll just send it to her, and maybe then she can understand why it is that I don't have a relationship with my mother. And of course it's my word against hers, and she would have to be mature enough to be able to distinguish, or at least try to discern who's being honest and who isn't. I'm just going to tell my story, and I don't care if I'm believed or not. It is my story and I'm going to tell it. So here it is. So we're getting to the point to where when I was a child, we moved to Colorado. So my dad had been working on the railroad ever since, I guess, right after high school, which in small town Missouri, particularly this particular small town, the railroad was kind of what a lot of people did. I know my uncles, my dad's cousins, my grandfather. I mean, we're all just railroad people. And so that's what they did in small town Missouri. That was the best employer in the railroad. I don't know if you know anything about the railroad, but it's a really good employer. Really good benefits. I would say right in line with maybe the military with benefits. So my dad had been working on the railroad, and he was doing really good. My mother was a phlebotomist working at the hospital. Both of them doing really good, making decent money. We had a nice home. I mean, it was modest, but for that time and in that small town, it was a decent home. We lived in a nice neighborhood, and but then my dad got laid off, and my dad being the one to, just know that he has to make money, and knowing that he's living in a small town where the railroad was like the employer of the town, and I'm sure he didn't want to commute an hour to St. Louis every day, so he joined the Army. And when he joined the Army, after of course his boot camp and I guess AIT, sorry, you can hear my dogs walking around. Anyway, we ended up, his first duty station was Colorado Springs, Colorado, Fort Carson. I'd never been out of my small town. I had never left before, except for to visit with my grandmother, who lived in Florida, my other grandmother who lived in Florida. So I was pretty excited. I remember being pretty excited. I don't remember being very scared about moving or very apprehensive about it. The only thing that I do remember is having to get rid of some of my things that I really loved. I feel like I got rid of, I don't know, maybe they took it with us, but I can't remember. I think we got rid of it. I had what was a little kitchen set that it had a little stove, a little, kid stove, and a little kid sink, and a little kid microwave and refrigerator. I don't know if they would have had a microwave in those days. It was late 70s. But maybe. I don't know. And I loved that thing. That was like my prized possession. And I feel like we had to get rid of it in order to move. And I do have a memory of it sitting out in our driveway. But I can't remember if it's because they were selling it and getting rid of it, or if because it was going to go onto the moving truck. But I don't remember having it in my room in Colorado. But I don't know. I don't remember. Anyway, so we moved to Colorado, and that's really when things got ugly. That's when my parents' marriage became, I guess, irreparably bad. And I don't remember them really fighting, so apparently it must have been done when we kids weren't around so much. But I remember one time after we got to Colorado, we lived in these townhomes. I remember my dad and my mother were getting ready to leave for the day. I don't know, the memory's really vague. I remember they were in the sliding glass door, because that's how we came in and out of the house. Why did they go through the sliding glass door and not the front door? I don't know. Anyway, so they were in the sliding glass door like they were getting ready to leave, or maybe they were coming home. But anyway, they turned around and they said to me, "Don't worry, Jenny. Me and your dad, or me and your mom, whichever one was speaking, I can't remember. We're never going to break up." And I remember thinking, huh? Because I don't remember there ever being a conversation about that happening. And so I was kind of confused. But I was like 7 or 8, and there was some traumas that really happened to me during those years. And I think there's a lot of things that in my brain just didn't get right or didn't keep right in my head. So I found that to be really strange. I didn't understand why they were telling me that. Well, I know now why. Back then I didn't know why. But we didn't live there very long. I don't know, maybe less than a year. And me and my mother and my brother ended up going back to Missouri, to the house that we lived in Missouri. They owned the house and they had been renting it out or something. But some of the things that happened in that townhome. Now, my mother had done some kind of not so great things prior to this time, but it seems like they just really escalated during this time. One of the things that happened before we went to Colorado, and I may have mentioned this on the channel before, sorry. This is the last time I'm going to be using this webcam, by the way. I have ordered a new webcam, so hopefully it will stay focused better than this one does. I tried my old location and it does the same thing in there, so I'm back here at this location in my home. But, so one thing that happened before we went to Colorado, which is kind of an indication of how things would go later on, is I was in my bedroom, and I got spanked a lot as a kid, a lot. My mother liked to spank. I feel like it was something she liked to do, and what I'm getting ready to tell you kind of proves that. I was in my bedroom. She was out in the living room with one of her friends, and they were out there getting high, pretty much. And I was in my bedroom, and I had all my baby dolls, and I loved my two things that I played with were baby dolls, well, 3 things: baby dolls, Barbie dolls, and stuffed animals. Those are the only 3 things I really cared about growing up. And I was playing with my baby doll, and I was, pretending in a way that I was familiar with me, and my baby doll got in trouble, and I spanked her. And my mother somehow heard this from the living room, and she called me. She called me in the living room. She says, "What are you doing in there?" And I said, "I'm playing with my baby dolls." And the conversation kind of happened, where I had to tell her that I was spanking my baby doll or whatever. And she said to me, she's like, "Well, if you want to know what it's like to be spanked, why don't you just come here?" And she took me in there and pulled my pants down so my butt was naked. She had me over her knee and started spanking me in front of her friend, and they were both laughing about it because they were high. And they just thought it was the funniest thing ever to just be, spanking me with my bare butt. And even as a young child, so we moved to Colorado when I was 7. This happened before 7. So I must have been 5 or 6. And I remember thinking how completely unfair that was. Like, why was I getting spanked? How is it wrong for me to spank my baby dolls? So, so then when we get to Colorado, I remember, I'm just going to tell you the incidents that happened. There were good things that happened there. We had I'm not going to go, I don't know, I just feel like my channel is about overcoming abuse. And so I'm just going to talk about the abuse. That doesn't mean that there weren't good times. It doesn't mean, that my life was all terrible. In some ways I had a really good childhood, but in other ways I didn't. But, so another thing that happened when we were in Colorado was, my mother, she just liked to do mean things. It was just fun for her. So we were sitting at the table, me, my brother, and my mother. This was during the day. I don't know where my dad wasn't there, probably at work. And so me and my brother were on the same side of the table, and she was on the other side of the table. And I guess he was probably doing schoolwork or something. Maybe I was too. And we had a ketchup and mustard on the table. And, it was a pump ketchup. It had a pump to it. And she picks it up and she goes, "Shannon," which is my brother. And he looks up and she goes, "Psh," and squirts him in the face with ketchup. Now she made it seem like it was an accident. Like, "Oh, I didn't mean to do that. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to get you. I was just joking and I was going to stop." She meant it. At least even me back then, I knew. I was like, she did that on purpose. That wasn't an accident. But that wasn't so serious, right? That was kind of a joke. I mean, it was a humiliation sort of thing. And I think he laughed it off, and I just kind of stood there. I don't know. My memory of the situation is I just was kind of dumbfounded. Like, what? What the heck was that all about? I don't know. Maybe I laughed though, just going on with the flow. But in my head, I know I was dumbfounded. So that was one thing. And then another thing, I had my birthday while we were there, and while I was at school, I guess my mother had gone and done the shopping, and she bought my birthday presents, and when I came home from school, everything was in bags, like on the table, like not on the table, but on the chairs of the table and on the floor. And, I just happened to look over in one of the bags, and it was in the bag. You could see it through the bag. I guess it was a plastic bag even back then. I guess, I don't know, that's my memory, it was a plastic bag. And I could see through it that it was a Barbie doll. And I don't remember saying anything or anything like that. I just remember somehow she noticed that I had seen it. And she got really angry with me. She accused me of trying to hunt down my birthday present and ruin the surprise before I could have my birthday. And she got really angry with me. She was yelling at me. She probably spanked me, though I can't specifically remember getting spanked. I just know that I was because I'm the type of person, when I'm really, really upset, I don't get over it quickly. And I tend to clam up. I tend to get quiet, and I don't like to talk when I'm really, really upset. And it's not even that I don't like to talk. Especially as a kid, I physically was not able to. There would be a block. I would shut down, and I just couldn't even speak. I remember my dad getting pretty angry with me one time because this is after, later on, there was an incident between me, my brother, and his second wife. And he kept trying to get me to tell him what had happened. And I was so upset that I couldn't speak. I literally could not speak. And he got angry. It was really, my dad's not one to really get angry, but he was really angry in this moment. And he was incredibly angry that I wasn't speaking. So anyway, back to the birthday. I was really upset. It was my birthday, and I got in trouble on my birthday for something, once again, that I really didn't do wrong. I'm sure I probably got spanked. I don't know. And so then my dad came home, and it was time, to do my birthday. And of course I was really upset. And he couldn't understand why I was so upset. He's like, "Jenny, what's wrong? He's taking pictures, and he's telling me to smile, and I'm just kind of like that." And he goes, Ginny's like, your mouth might be smiling, but your eyes aren't. Well, what's wrong? And of course I couldn't tell him. Couldn't tell him what happened, because then I'd have to suffer her wrath the next day when he went back to work. So I don't remember how I got out of like saying anything. I guess maybe there's just me clamming up again. I just clammed up and didn't say anything. And I could tell that my dad was really distressed by it. He knew something had happened, but I couldn't tell him what happened, and I don't know that my mother ever did. And then the worst thing that I can remember that happened in that house, in that townhome, is, okay, so in my day, at least in my household, the kids didn't sit on the couches or the chairs. So if we were watching TV, the kids were on the floor. So me and my brother would sit on the floor. My mother and my dad would be in the chairs or on the couches or whatever. And so I was sitting on the floor, and my brother was sitting on the floor. We were watching TV. This was one evening. My dad was not there. He was military, so he's probably had what they call HQ. I think it was called HQ or CQ. Where he had to stay overnight at the barracks to, watch over the guys or whatever. So I was just sitting there watching TV. Nothing was going on. All of a sudden, my mother starts throwing things at me. I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was popcorn, or maybe it was, I don't know, but she was throwing things at me. And I look around, I'm like, what the heck? What's going on? And then she starts like mocking me and making fun of me. And I don't understand. I'm like, I don't understand. I don't understand why this is happening. And it just keeps going. She keeps throwing the things, whatever it was she was throwing. She keeps mocking me. And then I start getting really upset, of course, because then my brother starts joining in. He was your typical big brother. An opportunity to make fun of my sister. Cool, let's do it. So then he started joining in. And I remember one time because once again, I was getting upset. I was crying. And they're like, oh, what's wrong, crybaby? What's wrong? And I'm not talking, right? So my brother figured out that I clam up when I get upset. And he's like, what's the matter, baby? Cat got your tongue? And he just kept saying that. And I started just crying and crying and crying. And then my mother gets angry with me. She's like, oh, why you got to start crying? Why are you being such a baby? If you're going to be such a baby, go to your room. Just go to your room. And she made me leave and go to my room. And I had to go to bed. I couldn't finish watching whatever I was watching. And I just had to go to bed. Just like to this day, I'm like, what? It was just pure meanness. It was just pure meanness for the sake of being mean. And I don't know why I got the brunt of it. I don't know why. Maybe because I was so easily upset. My brother's always been the type that it's harder to upset him. He just kind of lets things roll off his back. Or me, I would get upset really easily. I'm a girl. So those are the things this is like the prelude to how bad things would get once we went back to Missouri. I don't know that I'm going to dig into that just yet. So this is my Colorado year. I can't say years, but it was my Colorado year. And that's, like I said, was a prelude to how things would go. Because once we got back to Missouri and my dad wasn't there, things got really bad. Maybe I'll start that process, because that'll be like the end of my mother era. Because eventually my dad got custody of us. I don't know. We're already at almost 20 minutes. I won't dig into that right now. So this is just the beginning of what became in some ways, very traumatic childhood. And like I said, in other ways, it was a pretty decent childhood. We had anything, we didn't live in, once we left my mother, we didn't live in squalor or anything like that. When my dad and my mother separated, things got really bad. Both, we were pretty badly abused, neglected, didn't always have things to eat in the house, because my mother would be off partying with her friends and leave us there for days alone with no food. The only food that we would get is what we ate at school. And thankfully, we did at least get 2 meals a day at school. On the weekends, she would take us up to where she did her partying and leave us alone at her friend's house all weekend while she was somewhere else with friends partying. So I'll go into all that in another video. But I'm telling this story because, well, I've already told you why. But there's a lot of people that went through things like this as a child, and they don't have the courage to speak about it. They'd rather not speak about it. And I'm just here to tell you that these things need to be brought to the light. If it happened to you, you probably could use to speak about it and get it out of your system, or at least get it out there so that it's not bottled up inside of you and harming you anymore. So there is my Colorado story. And I thank you for listening. If this is of any interest to you at all, or any value to you at all, I would love it if you would like the channel, or follow my channel, like the video, subscribe, all that good stuff, all the YouTube-y stuff. And share your experiences, because my channel is called We All Have a Story, and it's not I have a story, it's we all have a story. So what is your story? I would love to hear it. And I'd love to, partner with you in healing from whatever your story is. So until next time, I hope you have a wonderful week, day, month, year, and once again, I thank you. So take care. Bye-bye.